Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Glass Pumpkins virtual demo presented by MyTech and the MIT Glass Lab. We are so happy to have you all here. The Glass Lab is a wonderful place at MIT in the basement of the Infinite Corridor in Building 4. If any of you haven't seen it, the next time you find yourself on campus able to wander the halls, you should absolutely go down and check it out. It's just across from the MIT Forge, and there's a lot of creative work that happens in this building. Peter Hook is the technical instructor of the MIT Glass Lab and will be our guide for today's presentation. As I said before, Fufi manning the camera, a former and now current student worker at the Glass Lab and now employee worker at the Glass Lab from time to time, who is here with our MyTech team. So Peter, welcome to the talk. Thanks for leading us through it. And why don't you take it away?
All right, well, you're welcome. Thanks for asking us to do another demo. So actually, yeah, I want to make sure at the end that if there are questions, because we have a current student and recent alum, Fufi, in the room, you can also direct questions to what it's like for students to have taken this class before. So keep that in mind. So yeah, I'm Peter Hauk. I'm the director of the Glass Lab. And this is Whitney Cornforth. Whitney was an MIT student and started taking glass blowing more than 20 years ago here and has been working as a senior instructor here in the Glass Lab for a long time. So we're going to do a live stream demo for you today. It's the first one we've ever done, so this will be interesting to see how it goes. We've done MyTech tours for many years, more years than I can count, but it's usually 10 or 15 people in the lab at a time, and we've never done a virtual demo before, so this should be interesting. So one of the things, I think the first thing I want to talk about is how can you blow glass with a mask on? You might be wondering, well, how can you bring students back into the lab during a time of a pandemic? So we had to think about that because in the normal tradition of glass blowing, of course, you use a blowpipe like this, and in order to inflate something that's blown, which is anything that's blown, any sort of cup or bowl or anything, you need to be able to blow with your mouth in the blowpipe, and your assistant has to be able to blow in the blowpipe. And so an intrinsic part of glass blowing is usually people sharing blowpipes, but that can't really happen during the time of a highly transmissible disease. So instead we came up with a way of, so I'll just put it this way, everything else that we do, the way that you touch the glass, the way that you tool the glass, the equipment that you use is all still the same. The only thing that's really different is how do you inflate the glass. So we had to solve the problem of how can you do that while keeping masks on. So I think I'll have Fufi come in and follow me over here. So normally at the bench, what we would do is I would have a blowpipe, and I would be at the bench like this. And Whitney, for example, would be over here, and I would be getting ready to blow something, and I would ask for air, and I would say blow, and Whitney would blow, and I'd say stop when I had enough inflation. But we can't do that. So instead, we have a compressed air system that we devised about a year ago that works like this. So we were lucky in that there is compressed air above all of the workstations in the room already. And so there's high pressure air at about something like on the order of 100 PSI coming into the room, 100 pounds per square inch. And then we found that to actually blow into a bubble, you only need about 3 to 4 pounds per square inch in order to inflate. That's when you're blowing as hard as you can. So the issue became, how do we get soft enough air, not how do we get hard enough air? So what we did was to put in a secondary regulator. So we have a primary, that big regulator, a secondary regulator. And then air comes from that regulator down through a hose here to this little foot switch on the ground. So this system is a kind of a combination of glass blowing gear and industrial gear from other kinds of applications. So this is just a pneumatic foot switch that turns the air on and off. So you get 3 pounds or you don't get 3 pounds. And then the air coming out of the foot switch goes back up through this little blue line and into this very flexible hose with a 90-degree swivel. And this is a blowpipe adapter that of the kind that scientific glass workers use. The scientific glass workers are always using both their hands all the time. They have the work in one hand and they have a tool in the other hand, and they're heating it a flame. And if they need to inflate, they don't have another hand to do that. So they always have a hose in their mouth and a swivel and an adapter like this. So we just kind of took the things that the scientific glass workers used and combined them with other available industrial tools to come up with this alternative inflation device. And it works very, very well. It works well enough that we were able to blow 2,000 pumpkins with it starting last September to this September. And it works well enough that we're going to start teaching beginning students how to blow glass with it this coming week. So the only sort of downside that I see to using this is that it's more of a solo experience. You sit at the bench. Normally you sit at the bench, you're working, you step on it yourself, and what's the assistant going to do? So we decided, well, the assistant's going to actually be the one when we start teaching. We'll have the pedal over here. And if Whitney's the assistant, I'm going to ask him for air. So it will be like a simulation of the traditional way of glass blowing in modified terms. So anyway, that's our system. That's how we blow glass. And now we're going to do a couple of demos for you. So we're going to make 2 pumpkins, 2 different kinds of pumpkins. We're going to make first the simpler pumpkin using glass powders, also known as frit, to make a glass pumpkin. And then at the online sale and in the Kresge sale, we had these fancy kind of cane pumpkins. Can I go grab one? I'm going to go grab one and I'll show it to you. So these are good examples of, this would be a frit pumpkin here. So it's orange with a little bit of another color right on the ribs. It's essentially all one color. And then this is the more fancy pumpkin made of individual canes. And the whole pumpkin itself, the body of the pumpkin, is made only of sticks of glass. And I'll explain that later. We're going to pull cane pretty soon here. So Whitney is about to start. Well, so I'll just say that whenever people blow glass together in the glass lab, the person at the bench is called the gaffer. So there's always one person who's going to be directing the piece, who makes the piece, who sits at the bench, and then there's an assistant. And so in this demo, Whitney's going to be the gaffer, and I will be the narrator and the assistant. So Whitney's going to go first over to the furnace. And this is where we melt all of our clear glass. This furnace is at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's incandescent. It's on all the time, 24/7, 365 for years at a time. And he goes in with the rod, also known as the blowpipe, and winds on a gather of glass, as much glass as he can get in one gather. And the glass is so hot and so plastic right now that if he stops turning, it will fall way off center and even onto the floor. So right now, Whitney is taking advantage of the heat on the surface of the glass to roll the gather in powdered glass. So that's a white color. Let's take a closer look at that color. And then he will go and reheat into the reheating furnace. So we have 2 furnaces that are on today. The glass furnace, where the glass is being melted in a big crucible, And then the glory hole, also it's a reheating furnace, but it's always in the industry called glory hole, is the reheating furnace. And that gets turned on just for the day and turned off at the end of the day. So that furnace is used to recapture heat. So WIT is using it right now to melt the color into the surface of the clear gather. Do you want to look at the colors on the marber at all? It might be interesting to show the palette of colors that we have here. This white is the white that WIT picked up. It's about the same coarseness of, and there he is going into the color to get a second layer of white on the surface. And then we have a gold brown and some larger chunks of this silver green, a transparent color, a pinkish aurora, a gold color, a ruby color, and two different greens there. And we'll just choose, I don't think we'll use all of the colors at one time, but he'll put some combination. Usually the white is the background color so that the other colors will show up against the white more strongly than if it were all transparent. So what he's doing right now is chilling the surface of the hot gather of glass so that it has a little bit of structure. And then he's going to walk over to the bench again and plug in our alternative inflation device that I described for you. Plug it in, step on the pedal, and if you look at the white gather of glass, you will see it expand a little bit. You can't see the bubble, but you will see the outside. See, it's beginning to expand and turn more spherical. So now we have a bubble inside that white gather of glass. And that's a starter, what we call the starter bubble. So now he's shaping with the jacks. Jacks are the tool that is probably the most frequently used and universally used tool in glass blowing wardrobe of tools. And he's using that just to shape and make sure that the piece is on center, gently pressing and turning to make sure that everything is centered around the axis of the blowpipe, so that when he goes in for another gather, everything is very centered. So right now it's just a question of waiting for a minute or two, not even a minute, while that first gather gets cool enough. And when I say cool, it's still probably around 1,000 degrees. But in the hot glass world, 1,000 degrees is pretty cold. And we'll go back now for another gather of glass. So if the furnace is at 2,100 and the gather was at 1,000, there's 1,000 degree difference between those two gathers of glass. So this is now all the glass that Whitney will need to make the pumpkin, and he'll go and get the second layer of color. Some transparent gold, a little bit of pink, or aurora, that color is called, sort of a salmon color. And then that's the transparent pink cranberry. And so the latent heat of the gather will make that glass stick to and sort of center a little bit on the surface, but then eventually everything gets cool enough that he has to return to the glory hole to capture some heat and really melt that color into the surface. Second trip to the color, and now some of that silver green, which will react chemically with the other colors. There's a silver salt in it that will react with some of the other chemistry and the other colors to produce these interesting auras, sort of margins of color around the larger chunks of green. It'll be interesting to see whether we can actually see that on the camera, but we'll get as close as we can. Okay. So Whitney is now going to shape the glass at the end of his pipe so that it can go into this mold here. Is this going to be the right size mold for you, or do you want the next one? So this is what's known in the glass blowing world as an optic mold. It's shaped sort of like a flower pot, but it's got this cavity with these ribs, these very kind of sharp teeth. And when you drop a hot glass hollow object and then blow into it, pressurize it, it will press up against every single cavity here, and you'll come out with the same contour. So Whitney's going to drop into the mold and then use the foot pedal to pressurize the bubble of glass so that it expands into the mold. Oh yeah, if you were just right over there. No, right here. Nice. So you might want to pass back this way, and now you can see that that entire bubble has taken on the shape of the interior of that mold, and it will remember that shape even when it gets blown out. So the inflation happens really fast here while the glass is still all the same heat. If you wait too long, the part that stays the hottest will be the only part that inflates. So Witt takes advantage of the fact that this thing is really the same heat pretty much all over, blows it out. He'll continue to press that foot pedal here and there as he needs to maintain the shape. Because when he touches like this, the shape will collapse a little bit and air will get driven out and back into the pipe. So every now and then you need to come back and do a little more inflation. Okay, so now this is where it really turns into a two-person operation. No pumpkin is a pumpkin until it has a stem. So I'm going to now prepare the stem, which is a hot gather of glass with some color that will be added hot to the body. So I go in and take 2 quick gathers in the furnace to get just a certain amount of glass. Not too little and not too much. And then while I still have all this heat, I'll go into the color here. Maybe I'll get creative and get 2 colors. And then I'm chilling the bottom, the tip a little bit, because I want this to be a little colder. So I'm transferring heat out of the glass and into the steel table called the Marver. And then very quickly, before it has a chance to get cold, I'll go back and heat again. And I drop this stem into another smaller mold that has the same kind of texture as the bigger pumpkin mold. Give it a little bit of a booster heat, but not very much. And then I'll come chill the tip on the floor, present it to Whitney. It fuses it directly onto the body, and it's hot enough to shape right now, but it won't stay hot for very long. So we have to move pretty fast here, pulling it out. We're going to wrap around this little copper rod, cut it. Whitney shapes it, tags it onto the body so it sticks to the body, shapes it a little, and he'll go back and flash. So at this point, that glass pumpkin is pretty complete, although the stem is still much hotter than the body. So Whitney will have to take a couple of heats where he finishes the stem and tweaks it. That's a nice shape, a good one. And then and he's used some compressed air to cool down the stem so it comes closer to being the same temperature as everything else. And then after one or two of these flashes in the glory hole, the pumpkin is ready to put into the annealing oven. So you cannot let this pumpkin just cool down to room temperature as fast as it can, because it will thermally shock. Glass really does not like to cool down fast because the inside and the outside cool at such different rates. So we will have to put this pumpkin into an oven where it holds at 930 degrees until we're finished working. And then we'll send the oven down on a very slow program overnight. So it loses heat over about 8 hours. And then in the morning, it should be happy. So if you look at the stem right now, it's become very shiny because Whitney used the torch to reduce the color. The metals came right to the surface. And now we're using this oxygen propane torch to soften the area of the break where it broke off so it will not be sharp. And a quick heating of the nail tool. We use the nail just to grab the pumpkin to load it into the oven. And that's how you make a pumpkin. So the annealing oven is all about releasing stress in the glass so that it can cool down at a given rate very slowly, and then the internal stresses in the glass can be removed slowly and effectively. So now let's see, I think we still have time to, we're going to show you how we pull cane, the way that we pull cane when we make fancier pumpkins. It's going to be a very quick cane pull, but glass has this amazing capacity to be able to be extruded when it's hot, and the surface will set up first. So the surface shape can be constrained to a circular shape, while the inside is still hot enough that you can continue to pull the glass in. And that's a sort of a free lunch that you get from glass that other materials would not enable you to do. So let's pull some cane. So to do that, I'm going to start off with a solid rod that we call a punty. This is not a blowpipe because I'm not going to inflate it. You can see the end is just solid. There's no hole there. And because we're going to gather a solid mass of glass with some color on it and then extrude it. So with my first little gather of glass, I'll go into the white. and then go back and get some heat. And then get a little more white and heat that in as well. So that will be the first layer. The second layer will probably have a different color, and there'll be a final layer of clear glass casing the cane. So right now I'm just going to shape this a little bit before I gather another layer of glass on it. Rolling it on the marver, squeezing the glass off, and working my way down to the tip so that I can get the entire shape centered around the axis of the punty. Just makes everything easier if everything stays on center. Clean up my frit. I think we'll use some of this gold brown. This is a beautiful color. I love the gold brown. I will. The second layer, and I'll go right into the frit. Reichenbach always smells a little different. I mean, the Zimmermann. This is a particular kind of colored glass that is no longer manufactured. So I have some old color. It doesn't ever go bad, really. Sometimes it is bad. So now I'm going to heat all that color in to the surface. Go back, get a little bit more, and then I'll be ready for my final gather of glass. And we heat that until it's smooth. If I were to gather over this without heating it, there would be so much texture on the top of the surface of this that I would probably entrain a lot of bubbles and trap a lot of bubbles in the cane, which, you know, could be good if I was looking for that, but I'm not looking for that today. So once again, just making sure that everything is centered. So this cane will be white on the inside and a kind of a gold brown color over the white. Now I'm going to go to the pipe chiller and chill the pipe because I can't grab it up here without burning myself. So I'll set it into this trough of water and dry the pipe, and then I can very comfortably grab the punty way up high, which is much, much easier than trying to carry it around like this. This will make you really tired and fast. You want to be able to carry the pipe like this. So I think this is about cold enough now that I can get my last gather. But right now, I'm just letting the heat from that gather work its way into the core so that everything starts to move evenly. Because the goal of a cane pull is that you end up with a lot of cane that's as close to the same diameter as you can get, so that you can use it all instead of having to throw away the really thin stuff and the really thick stuff. So now we'll get a little bit of heat, and I'm paying attention to how this is moving. It's starting to move all over. Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna Marver again. Yep. So right now I'm just making sure I have enough heat here to really pull this thing out. And I think there is enough heat here. So right now I'm just putting a little bit of a chill on the surface. And I'll go in the water here, chill the very bottom to give me a good stable foundation. And then I'll drop this hot gather of glass right on the post that Whit just made and pull, invert it, pull, invert again. I'm going to hand this in to Whit while I begin to slowly walk away. And timing is super important here. If I move too fast, the cane's going to be really thin, and then I'll be down at the other end of the room with a big fat hot piece of glass and nowhere to go. So I'm taking my time here, but you see I'm turning it and letting it fall and judging the heat. It's beginning to chill a little bit now. So I'm going to pull a little faster and a little bit harder. But again, not anywhere near as hard as I could or as fast as I could. It's all about even, going for an even diameter. You usually don't have to pull very, very hard. Sometimes we do it for the fun of it, but if there's enough heat in the glass, you don't need to pull hard at all. So for people who aren't in the room, how long would you say this is, Fufi, the cane pull? At least 20 feet, right? And then we're just waiting for it to cool enough that it's rigid, and it probably is now. We'll put it down. I just quickly shock it with the tweezers. It breaks, and it's still very hot. I can't touch it with my fingers, but it's cool enough that it can be sitting here on these rails. And I can break it by chilling it. And that's how we pull cane. So the cane can get very, very fancy. This is a fairly simple cane. It's just a couple of layers of color. But I'll show you these canes. You might, yeah, you can, maybe you can see through. Can you see through the edge of the cane? Yeah. And you see how there's a core of white and then the aura of gold around that. And then mostly clear, but because of the magnification properties of the glass, it really looks like it's mostly color from the outside, but that is an illusion. So let's come and look at this other cane. So this is some cane that I made earlier today and some of it the other day. And if you look, I don't know how close you can get and see the detail of this cane, but it's a lattice. It's a spiral, but also a lattice. So you can see there's a very fine line and a larger white fuzzier line. And so I'm going to alternate the fine line with the fuzzy line and make a little glass gourd, a fancy gourd out of that. So Whit's already preheated some of this. We can pick it up. And the idea here is, let's go back and look at this, Rookie, is that we take all of these sticks of glass that are independent, you know, they have no connection with each other, and we're going to get them hot enough on a kiln shelf that we can actually fuse them into a sheet that still, each one of these will retain its circular profile, but they will be joined together at the interstices where they join, and hot enough that you can actually roll up this flat sheet into a round, kind of a cylindrical object. So that is the trick we're going to attempt to perform next. So I've got a measurement. Oh, there. So we have this very cool tool called the pie divider. And if you use the pie divider to measure the length of your cane, you know, all of the length of the row of cane, this caliper divides that by pi, and you end up with a diameter that is the appropriate diameter to roll up the entire group of cane. So what I need to do now is at the end of a blowpipe, make kind of a donut of clear glass so that I can roll that up. So that's what I'll do. I blow a really super thin bubble. I go back in the furnace and I'm heating that bubble. And it's so thin that it collapses and goes away and leaves me with an open ring of glass around the head of the blowpipe, which I can then adjust the appropriate diameter. So it's already pretty close. Take the jacks, and I'm flattening the side, pushing the glass back so it's not coming off the end at all. And then I'll measure. And the diameter is pretty good here. How you doing, Whit? Okay. So Whitney is now squishing the glass together after heating it some. This often takes a couple of heats for the glass to really get joined together enough that it can be picked up without separating back into individual canes. Okay. Oh, I forgot to hand this off to you. So I'm getting my collar preheated, watching what Whitney is doing. I'm going to adjust my timing so when he comes out, I come out, so we're at about the same heat. And he's going to go and squish one final squish. Then I come over and roll the canes up into a sort of a burrito. Very, very hot burrito. But before I go on, I'm going to use this little brush to make sure that any dust that was on the kiln shelf doesn't stick to the glass. And now you see I have a gap here, and I have to deal. So my collar was a little bit too big. I have to squeeze that cane together so that I can close up the gap. So I'll use my tweezers. Just pull that cane together around the collar. And then we're going to heat it up and really fuse it together. So it's very lightly fused together when it comes off of the pastorale, off of the kiln shelf. But now that I've got it on the blowpipe, I can really get it up to temperature. So when we pulled it out of that oven over there, it was only at about 1100 degrees. The glory hole is at more like furnace temperature. So the glory hole is at about 2000 degrees. So this cane is going to be traveling ever upward in temperature now. So now I'm rolling the cane to get it stuck to itself. And I'll come back, and I still have to deal with this little seam here, which I think I just finally did close up. So now the cane it's pretty well stuck to itself. And I'll just do one more trip to the marver, maybe two, to roll it, to make sure that the cane is turning into one wall, not 20 different canes. We're looking for it to be one continuous membrane at this point. But I don't want to get it so hot that it loses its texture. So, that's the trick, is to get it hot enough that it's all fused and you can inflate it, but not so hot that it just looks like a beach ball. I'm just adjusting my churning a little bit. If I'm off center a little bit, I can change the speed of rotation or the part of the glass that's touching the marver to bring things back on center. The marver, by the way, I don't know if I said this before, is that steel table. That is an inch thick slab of carbon steel. It weighs hundreds of pounds, and it's a fabulous heat sink. So it's good for chilling the glass and shaping the glass. Okay, this is stuck together now. So now what do I have to do? What do I do now? I can't blow into it because it's still open. So I have to close it off so it can become an inflatable object. So in order to do that, I'm going to pinch the very ends of the cane with the jacks and gather all the canes together. Until I can close off what I hope will be a sealed bubble here. And it's still hot enough that I can cut that flower off with these diamond shears. The glass is still in this kind of plastic state where it can be cut instead of broken. Right now, I'm just pressing down at the very end of the cane to make sure that I have a seal. So when I go to inflate it, air will blow into it instead of out of a hole somewhere. So a little heads up. I'm going to use the bench torch here to torch the moil. It's going to be kind of loud. And what I'm doing is I'm specifically heating a part of this bubble that I want to have hotter than the other parts that would not normally be hotter. So we use this torch, the bench torch. And we burn the glass up. Hopefully the color will come back. Sometimes when you torch the glass, you can reduce it, and you can even burn glass so that the color goes away and it doesn't really come back, but this white is pretty forgiving. And all of that black that I induced goes away with a flash. I torch it again here. And that was for a slightly different reason, but same basic reason, that I wanted to have one part get hot while the other part stayed relatively cold. We'll go and get some more heat. And continue shaping. This is about as blown out as it's going to be, but I need to shape it a little bit more. So I'm working on what's going to be the bottom. I'm constricting this line up here, mostly for aesthetic reasons. And one more heat. Whitney, you can start that stem. So this is a gourd, not a pumpkin. You may have guessed that by now. Right now, I'm just making sure that I have a bottom that's going to want to break nice and clean. And I'm letting the little gourd shape settle around the neckline that I just made, so it has a flat bottom that it can sit on instead of a round bottom that it would not really want to sit on. And now we're letting things get kind of cooler now, because I don't want the shape to move around very much. So I'm not going to give it a lot of heat right now. We're just going to hang out and let it get to something closer to about 900 degrees. And I'm paying attention to what Whitney is doing now, because I will have to take a flash or two before I get this stem. If I wait too long between heats, the pumpkin can get too cold and crack. And that's happened to me many times. And flip. And now I'm just making sure that the stem is where I want it, more or less. And letting it all come to an even heat. So another flash, and then we'll put it away. And after that, we can answer any questions you might have. So to ensure that it comes off the way I want to, I'm going to take just a little drop of water, put it right on the bottom here at the junction between the gourd itself and where I want it to break. And then I tiptoe over here. Give it a little hit. And it breaks right there where I put the water. And so give it a little shaping with a spoon. And then it's ready to go away to its happy annealer home, and it will come out tomorrow. So there we go, 2 different kinds of pumpkins. Simple frit pumpkin, fancy pumpkin, a cane pull, all in 1 hour. And we have just a few minutes for questions if there are any questions. Okay.
All right. Are there any good glass blower and glass blowing jokes? Like a glass blower goes into a bar and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, none of them are repeatable in present company. Can you think of any good taste? I think good taste jokes and glass blowers are 2 separate sets that don't overlap at all. I'll think about that one though. That's a great question. I wish I had a better answer for it.
All right, next question. Can you say more about how the glass remembers to form the pumpkin ribs from the mold?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. Well, so a lot of that is based on the distribution of the glass when you go into the mold. Gets redistributed a little bit in the mold, becomes a little bit thicker in the rib locations. But it's more about heat. So the most important thing is that you are very, very hot when you go into that mold, so you get a really good impression in the mold. And then you don't reheat for very long at all. So when you go to blow out the pumpkin, it remembers the mold because it still have the temperature from the mold. So it's still a little bit cold on the ribs and hot on the inside. So when you blow it out, it keeps the shape. If I heat several times or I get it way too hot, beginners do this a lot, you end up with a smooth surface. You probably remember this. Yeah, so it's mostly about heat and timing of heat. And glass blowing is all about heat and timing of heat.
What were markers made from before steel plate was available?
Yeah, probably stone of some kind. I mean, the word marver might come from marble, the word for marble. I mean, a lot of these tools have Italian names in their origin, like this tool here is called the soffietta, which means little puff or little wind in Italian. So that I'm just trying to tell you, I don't really know the answer to the question, but I'm trying to be poetic about it. Probably stone, I would say, or maybe they had another way of chilling other than steel.
What is the limit to the size of what you can create of the glass?
What is the limit to the size of the things we can create in the glass lab? Well, our limitations here are really the size of the glory hole and the size of the annealing ovens. So these annealing ovens are about 26 inches wide. Actually, they're wider than that. They're about 26 inches deep and maybe 33 or 4 inches wide, 36 inches wide. So we can put some really big things in those. And then the glory hole doesn't look like it's very big, but when you get all 4 doors open, it's really big. So that, just for a point of reference, that diameter is about 18 inches. And the depth of the glory hole is probably about 24, 5, 6 inches. So that's a very large volume object that you can make. And when the great master Lino Tagliapietra was here, he made some very large things. He would fill up the entire shelf of one annealing oven with one piece, make 4 or 5 pieces and be done for the day.
Someone wants to see the examples again of what you just made. You think you could pull them off the shelf?
Yeah, for sure. So this is one of the samples that we had, so we would remember how to price our Frit pumpkins for the pumpkin patch. This orange one with the kind of, I think this is called iris brown. After we come out of the mold, we quickly reheat and then roll in this color, and it sticks only to the tip of the rib. And then this pumpkin, I just made this for somebody who wanted one that was very much like one that was in the pumpkin patch. And that's made of 2 kinds of cane, this yellow and black ribbon cane, and then a translucent red and ruby cane. And this one is like the one I just made in the sense that it's only made of the canes. It doesn't have any furnace glass under it.
What makes glass good or bad?
You want to take that one?
That's an incredibly subjective question.
Can you restate the question?
Sure, what makes glass good or bad? I think what makes glass, why I love working with glass, is the balance between something that is so rigid and fragile and yet is transparent and allows for some sort of spontaneity both in the process of working it, and I feel like that can also be captured in the piece itself, whether that's due to the shape or the coloration that can be used, those sorts of designs. Bad glass is just ugly.
What else is commonly made in the glass lab other than pumpkin?
So in the glass lab, we make all sorts of other things other than pumpkins throughout the year. Students and instructors make basically almost anything else you can think of. Students start with making paperweights. and then they move on to cups and vases and bowls. We move through a series of shapes like that. And instructors work on all those things and refining those things and different color applications on a lot of those sort of basic objects, as well as all sorts of sculptural things. So pretty much anything you can think of that could be made out of glass has been made in here.
How is the glory hole heated?
How is the glory hole heated? So the glory hole and the main glass furnace, those are both heated with natural gas, as well as the pipe warmers. The annealers are electric ovens.
Very cool. And now I've got a couple of pumpkin patch questions. Wants to talk?
We'll see.
All right. For those of us who have ordered glass pumpkins via online sale, when can we expect to receive those in the mail?
Those are going out via FedEx as we speak. It's
Or
a
going out through FedEx?
we are shipping out pumpkins from the online pumpkin patch as we speak. We've had a couple setbacks dealing with MIT shipping, interfacing with FedEx, but the first of those have started rolling out, and we're getting them out as fast as we possibly can at this point.
Say a word about how probably going to take us about 10 days to get them all.
That process of getting the 1,100 or so pumpkins shipped out is probably going to take us 10 days or so to get those all processed.
All right. And one last question. How do you order a glass pumpkin online?
How do you order a glass pumpkin online? So we had 1,100 pumpkins available to purchase online at our online pumpkin patch this year. They were on sale for one day only, and they sold out in about 4 hours or so. So we work all year long making those pumpkins and then sell them in the one event. So they're only available that one time, that one day to order online.
All right. That's all we've got for our questions.
Thank you. You want to say?
I guess so. Is it time to sign off now? Well, thank you, everybody, for showing up for the talk. And if you have any further questions, I suppose you could direct them through Fufi, and we'll get them and could answer them in somehow. Okay.
Thank you so much, Peter. This was such an entertaining event, and what a treat getting to see all of the different pumpkins and the pulling of cane without all the sweat and heat of the glass.
Yeah, I don't think we could have gotten, were there 30 people here, or 40, or how many?
We got up
people
to
around?
Actually 63 participants. We're
Oh
really,
yeah, no way we get 63 people in the room.
yeah, not a chance. So
No,
this was
not a chance.
wonderful to be able to share this with everybody. Thank you guys for coming out to this talk. Just a reminder, we'll be available on YouTube. We'll send that link out to everybody. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to send them to mytech-office@mit.edu, and we'll pass them on to Peter. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
All right, thank you.